by.
What is up, YouTube? This is Nashi with a brand new deck profile video. This time I'll be going back and showing you the changes and updates to my 60-card Darkness deck. If any of you have seen the older versions of this deck, the 60-card variant's always been a bit unstable toward its consistency. However, with the release of some cards off the recent ban list going back to 3, and with the utilization of Link monsters with the extra deck mechanics I already have, I think I may have created a competent build, for the moment, that utilizes every kind of extra deck monster we could use, aside from Pendulum. Let's see where this goes. Now, being a 60-card deck, I'm going to split up the monsters into two components, starting with the 4-star engine specifically. First off, we have a playset of Armageddon Knights. Upon its summon, that's normal, flip, or special, you get to send any dark monster from your deck to the graveyard. A pair of Doomsday Horror. I keep going back and forth between 1 and 2 on this one, but I think 2 is fine for the way the deck operates at the moment. It gains 300 attack and defense for every banished dark monster, and when it's destroyed and sent from the field to the graveyard, you get to take every banished dark monster and put it right back in the grave. Triple Kage Tokage. When you normal summon a level 4 monster, you can special summon this from your hand, but it cannot be used as synchro material. Prometheus, King of the Shadows. When it's normal summoned, you get to banish any number of dark monsters out of your graveyard, and if you do, he gains 400 attack and defense for every one you banished until the end phase. A pair of Shaddoll Dragons. If it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can destroy a spell trap on the field, and if it's flipped, you target a card your opponent controls and return it to the hand. Triple Summoner Monk. Really happy this card finally went back to 3 because it's given my deck a bit more smoothness in its opening moves. While it's face up on the field, it cannot be tributed. If it's normal or flip summon, you change it to defense. And once per turn, you can discard a spell, special summon a level 4 monster from your deck, but it can't attack that turn. One copy of Witch of the Black Forest. First off, I'm really happy to see this card off the ban list, and even with its nerf to its effect, it's still fairly good. If it's sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add a monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand, but you cannot use it in any way, shape, or form for that rest of that turn. And you can only use this effect once in a turn. Witch of the Black Rose. 4-star tuner cannot be special summoned, and when it's normal summoned, if you control no other cards, you can reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a monster, she stays on the field and you keep that card. If it's a spell trap, they both go to the grave. And now for the monsters that are not level 4. Starting off with a playset of Battle Fader, my saving grace in a lot of games that are not going my way. If my opponent attempts to direct attack me, I can special summon this from my hand, and if I do, the battle phase is over. We also have a playset of Shaddoll Falco. If it's sent to the graveyard by a card effect, you can special summon it from the graveyard face down. And if it is flipped, then you get to special summon any Shaddoll monster from your graveyard face down. A pair of Phantom Knight's Ancient Cloak. This card is good, but I don't think it's good enough to run at 3 in this particular deck anymore. But if it is in the graveyard, you can banish it to add any Phantom Knight's card, aside from a copy of itself, from your deck to your hand. And if it's face up on the field, then you can turn it from attack to defense mode to give another dark monster you control 800 attack points until the end of your opponent's turn. The Phantom Knights of Silent Boots. If you control a Phantom Knights monster, including a copy of itself, you can special summon it from your hand. And if it's in the graveyard, you can banish it to add any Phantom Knights spell trap from your deck to your hand. Moving to level 5, we have a pair of Shaddoll Beast. If it's flipped, you get to draw 2 cards and discard 1. But if it's sent to the graveyard by card effect, you just get to draw a card. It's actually a really good combo card in tandem with cards like Armageddon Knight. And Triple Dark Creator. You can only special summon this card from your hand, and that's only if you have 5 dark monsters or more in your graveyard and none on your field. And once per turn, you can banish a dark monster out of your graveyard to special summon any dark monster from your graveyard. Next up is the wide variety of spell cards. A playset of Allure of Darkness. You draw 2 cards and then banish any dark monster from your hand. A playset of Creeping Darkness. I can banish 2 dark monsters out of my graveyard and add any level 4 dark monster from my deck to my hand. Single Dark Hole, obvious. Foolish Burial, and I hate to say this, but I actually did not want to run this card in the original version of the deck, purely because I didn't think I needed it. But any excuse to drop more monsters from my deck to the graveyard is a good one. Double Galaxy Cyclone. If you play from your hand, you can destroy a set spell trap, and if you can banish it from your graveyard, except during the turn that it went there, to destroy a face-up spell trap. Reinforcement of the army, and there's plenty of level 4 or lower warriors that I can add from my deck to my hand. Shaddoll Fusion at 3. I can fusion summon a Shaddoll monster by using materials from my hand or field, but if my opponent controls a monster summoned from the extra deck, I have the ability to use materials from my deck, which is where this card really shines. That grass looks greener at 1, of course. If you have more cards in your deck than your opponent does, you send the difference from the top of your deck to the graveyard. The beginning of the end at 2. If you have 7 or more dark monsters in your graveyard, you can banish 5 of them to draw 3. And the Phantom Knight's Rank Up Magic Launch. During the main phase, I can take a Dark Xyz monster I control that has no materials, and Xyz summon a dark monster on top of it 1 rank higher by using it and this spell card as Xyz materials. And if the spell card's in the graveyard, I can banish it to attach a Phantom Knights monster in my hand to an Xyz monster I control as an additional material. And now we finish up with the trap cards. First off is a Bottomless Trap Hole, staple in all my decks. Double Dark Light. I contribute a dark monster with 1500 or more attack and destroy all monsters that were special summoned in this specific turn. Escape from the Dark Dimension is an old card I used to run in this deck back when I first had it at 60, but had to cut it because I had to put it to 40. You can take a banished dark monster and special summon it, but if it leaves the field, this card does too, and vice versa. Triple Phantom Knight's Fog Blade. Target an effect monster on the field, it cannot attack, it cannot be attacked, and its effects are negated. And if this card's in the graveyard, I can banish it to special summon a Phantom Knights monster out of my graveyard, but it's banished when it leaves the field. Solemn Warning, staple in everyone's deck. And the Torrential Tributes. Next we move into the side deck. First is the additional copy of Ancient Cloak, and there's also the playset of Dark Grepher, the counterpart to Armageddon Knight I used to run, but because my hand advantage has started to diminish, I decided to push it to the side entirely. If you have a level 5 or higher monster, Dark, in your hand, you can special summon this by discarding that level 5 or higher monster. And while it's on the field once per turn, you can send a dark monster from your hand to the graveyard to send a dark monster from your deck to the graveyard. There's also the additional copy of Prometheus. A single Phantom Knights of Cloven Helm. While it's on the field, if a Phantom Knights card goes to the graveyard, it gains 500 attack points once per turn. And if it's in the graveyard, I can banish it to add any Phantom Knights card from my graveyard back to my hand during the end phase. There's also the additional Witch of the Black Forest, in case I change my mind. Another Witch of the Black Rose. Another Shaddoll Beast. A Kyrgorian Anti-Luminescent Knight. By detaching a material, I can redirect any targeting effect to any other appropriate target, and it's more than once per turn. But given the new monster I just inserted into the extra deck negates targeting effects, I kinda felt like this wasn't really needed anymore. 1 Brain Control, 2 MST, an additional Rank Up Magic Launch, and an additional Escape from the Dark Dimension. And now we have the extra deck. First up is a playset of El Shaddoll Winda, the obvious counterpart to the Shaddoll engine I run in the main deck. As long as it's face up on the field, it cannot be destroyed by card effects. Each player only gets 1 special summon per turn, and if it does go to the graveyard, I get to add my Shaddoll Fusion from the graveyard back to my hand. Ally of Justice Catastor. While it's face up on the field, if it were to battle a non-dark monster, it automatically destroys it before damage calculation. Celestial Wolflord Blue Sirius at 1. If it's destroyed in the center of the graveyard, you can target an opponent's monster, and it decreases its attack by 2400 permanently. Dark Strike Fighter as well. Once per turn, you contribute a monster you control and inflict 200 damage times the level of that monster you attributed. Fields of the Diabolic Dragons. Cannot be destroyed by battle, cannot be destroyed by card effects, and if I take any effect damage or battle damage involving him, he gains attack points equal to the damage I actually took. And one Dark End Dragon. It can freely send opponent's monsters to the graveyard by reducing his attack and defense by 500 permanently. Moving into the Xyz, we have a copy of Phantom Knight's Breaksword. I can detach from him, target a card I control, and a card my opponent controls, destroy them both. And if he's destroyed and sent to the grave, I can target any 2 Phantom Knight monsters with the same level in my graveyard, and special summon them 1 level higher. Dark Rebellion Xyz Dragon. Double detach to reduce an opponent's monster's attack by half, and then add it to him permanently. Evil Swarm Nightmare. When your opponent special summons a monster or monsters, except during the damage step, you can detach 1 material and set them face down. I have realized just how powerful the ability to set monsters face down is, especially if they special summon a lot from the extra deck. King of the Feral Imps. Detach to add any reptile from deck to hand, and if you were paying attention, my only target is actually Kage to Kage. Dark Requiem Xyz Dragon. Can only be summoned through 3 level 5 monsters, but obviously I have a rank up spell and a Dark Rebellion. And thanks to that, it gains the effects of, once per turn, I can detach a material, target a face-up monster my opponent controls, its attack goes to 0, and this card gains attack equal to its original attack. And, during either player's turn, when my opponent activates a monster effect, I can detach a material, negate the activation, destroy it, then special summon any Xyz monster from my graveyard. And now moving into the part that a lot of people have been questioning, the links. 1 Akashic Magician, straight up, straight down, requires 2 monsters with the same type, and given the number of warriors and spellcasters I run, this is not difficult. When it's summoned, any monster that it points to goes back to the hand, and once per turn, I can declare a card name and excavate top cards off my deck equal to the total link rating of all link monsters co-linked to this card, which will be at most 3, unless my opponent co-links something too. If I get that card, it goes to my hand, and the rest go to the grave. And finally, we have a Decode Talker. Requires 2 or more effect monsters, gains 500 attack for every monster it points to, and when my opponent activates a card or effect that targets a card or cards I control, I contribute a monster this card points to, negate the activation, and if I do, I destroy it. And that's the deck. Obviously, being a 60-card dark deck that isn't Infernoid, Blightsworn, or some other mix using Fairy Tale Snow, it doesn't have the same congruency as some of the decks that you've seen in common tournaments. But this build has such an unusual synergy between its archetypes that not only does it win many times more than people think it would, it takes a lot of people for surprise, and a lot of people don't know how to side against this deck either, considering its unusual playstyle. Also, I'm not sure if I want to add another Link monster. I'm thinking either Borolo Dragon or maybe Topologic Bomber Dragon, just some Link 4 that I can really use, but I seem to have difficulty just putting out a Link 3, let alone a Link 4. So I'm going to keep working on that function, but if anybody else can think of anything I can do to improve this dark deck any further than I have, feel free to let me know. But in the meantime, this has been Nanashi, signing out.
What's the next stage? What's the next stage?